teaching a very specialized group of students or a niche group of students, we often can't find the materials or the resources or any course textbooks to help us teach these students. So this would be students such as professional students, business students, and students in different types of workplaces. When we find ourselves in these situations, we have to also become course designers in addition to being the teacher. What we're going to work through in this lesson is a basic framework to follow if you find yourself in this position of having to design a course for a very specialized group of students. A curriculum is a series of documents that answer basic questions about how a course is going to be delivered. Each component of a curriculum answers different questions that you may have as a teacher or as an administrator. We're going to walk through each of these questions throughout this lesson. However, before we do that, I'm going to put you to work. Take a look on your handout at activity number 1. Down one side, I've given you all of the questions that you need to have answers to. Down the other side, I've given you lots of blank spaces. But I've also provided you with the words that go in those blank spaces. So take a look and see if you can put the words in the correct blank spaces to start to understand the process that we go through to build a curriculum. First blank space, you should have the words course rationale. The course rationale answers the basic question of why should we develop this course in the first place? What's our purpose in doing this course? In the second blank space, you should have the words course objectives. This is simply what you want students to know and be able to do by the end of the course. In the third blank space, you should have the words needs analysis. A needs analysis is a process that you go through in order to determine what students need to learn in the course. And in a needs analysis, there's different ways that you can determine this, and we'll look at some of those when we get to that section. In the fourth blank space, you should have the words situation analysis. Here you're answering the question about what situational constraints or situational factors might influence how the course is structured and how the course is delivered. In the fifth blank space, you should have the words course logistics. At this step, we're answering the questions about how the course is going to be delivered. How long is each class going to be? How long is the overall course going to be? Where is it going to be located? Who's going to teach it? In the sixth blank space, you should have the words syllabus. Here we're starting to get into the course content. The syllabus answers questions about what are we actually going to teach? How long are we going to spend on each topic? And what order are we going to put these topics in? In the seventh space, you should have the words materials selection. Once we've decided our content, we need to figure out what materials, what books, what articles, and so on we're going to use to teach our course. In the next blank space, you should have entry assessment. This is simply the stage at which we figure out how are we going to know which students to let in the course and which students are not suitable for the course. In the next blank space, you should have the words ongoing assessment. Here we're asking the question, how are we going to know as we go through the course that our students are learning what we want them to learn? How are we going to assess progress as we go? The 10th blank space is exit assessments. When the course is done, how are we going to determine what students learned throughout the entire course? The final blank space should have the words course evaluation. At this final stage, we're looking at how do we determine the overall effectiveness of the course? What was the student experience in the course, and what was the instructor's experience in the course? From here on in, we're going to look at each one of these pieces of a curriculum. By the end of the lesson, you'll have a good idea of how to approach each piece. Recall that the first piece of a curriculum and the first series of questions we ask is all about the course rationale. Here we're trying to figure out the purpose of the course. There are 4 key questions that you need to ask and answer at the course rationale step. The first question is, what is the profile of the student that you're determining this course for? Who are you tailoring the course for? Who are you expecting to be in the course? The second question is a very simple one. Why is it important for your organization to offer this particular course? Along a similar line, why is it important for students to take this course? What do they need? What are they going to get out of this course that's crucial for them? Finally, you need to ask a money question. Why should money be spent on developing this particular course and not some other course? If you're a manager, you'll probably be involved in developing the course rationale. If you're a teacher, possibly the course rationale has already been developed and decided upon before you come into the process. If this is the case, make sure you ask the question, what is the course rationale? Because this really is the foundation for all of the steps moving forward. Course objectives are all about what we want students to know and to be able to do by the end of the course. It really helps to divide course objectives into 3 main pieces: language systems, language skills, and content. We'll look at each one of these 3 in turn. There are 4 language systems that we need to look at for our objectives. The first is pronunciation. This is how a language sounds. This consists of the individual sounds of the language, as well as things like word stress, sentence stress, and intonation. The second piece is vocabulary, the words of the language. The third piece is grammar, the set of rules and patterns that govern how we put our words together. And the final piece is discourse, the set of rules and patterns that govern how we put our sentences together. At the top of page 4, we have the language skills that we need to look at for our objectives. So this includes listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Content represents perhaps the most complex piece of our objectives. It's certainly the largest. There's a diagram on page 4 that shows you some of this complexity. To start to understand some of the content that we have to put into our course, we can divide it into products, behaviors, and values and beliefs. If, for example, I'm developing a course for the workplace, I might look at the products of that workplace, things like policies, procedures, tools, computer programs, anything that we can see and touch in that workplace. Then I might look at the behaviors of that workplace. What do people do on a daily basis in that workplace? And then what's the language associated with what they do? Finally, we need to consider workplace ideas and values. These are the values, beliefs, and attitudes that drive the organization. When we look at the possible content for our course, it can get a bit overwhelming. There's a lot of things that we could put in our course, but we may not have a lot of time to cover all of those things. So we have to make choices. In order to do that, we have to prioritize. Is listening more important than speaking? Is pronunciation more important than grammar? Or are values more important than behaviors, for example? These are questions that we ask at the next stage, which is the needs analysis stage. Who do we need to talk to get information for our needs analysis? A logical starting point is prospective students. Students have a pretty good idea both of what they want to learn and what they need to learn. But we don't want to stop there. We also need to talk to the administrators at the education institution where the course is going to run. We need to talk to prospective employers. We need to talk to other professionals or other workers who work in the same context. And we also need to talk to funders. These are the people who are going to put up the money for the course that we're going to run. They also have a pretty good idea of what they want to see in the course. The first tool we can use to gather information in our needs analysis is a questionnaire or a survey. There are 4 types of questions that we can use in our questionnaire or survey. The first type is a very simple yes/no question. The second type, also very simple, is a choice question. Do you like this or this? The third question type is a short answer question. We usually get a single word or just a couple of words for this question answer. And finally, there are long answer questions, also known as open-ended questions. For these questions, we'll get a lot of detailed information if the person answering the questionnaire or survey has the time to give that to us. The second way that we can gather information in our needs analysis is through observations. We can go into a workplace or go into a professional setting and take notes about what we see and about the language that we hear people using. The third way that we can gather information in our needs analysis is through interviews. We can do individual interviews either on the phone, face-to-face, via email, or via video conferencing. We can also do group interviews. Group interviews are really good because we can get a lot of interesting discussion going around the issues. The fourth way that we can collect information in our needs analysis is through document collection. We can go into a workplace or talk to professionals, and we can gather all of the written documents that people work with in that workplace or in that profession. So we can collect things like memos, letters, reports, proposals, and forms that are associated with that workplace or profession. Finally, we can do a legislation review. We can look at all of the rules, all of the laws, and all of the policies that govern that particular workplace or that particular profession. The situation analysis part of our curriculum looks at any constraints we may face as we try to deliver the course. There are 5 main sets of factors that we need to look at in our situation analysis. So we'll take a look at each one of these in turn. As we go through these different sets of factors, take a look at your handout on pages 6 and 7, and you'll see more detailed questions associated with each set of factors. The first set of factors we need to look at are social factors. These factors are actually outside of our school, but they do impact how we deliver our course. Some of the factors here are, is the profession or the workplace that we're looking to deliver the course for a regulated professional workplace? Are there safety issues in this workplace that we need to address in our course? Are there union issues that we need to address in our course? And so on. So these are our social factors. The second set of factors are institutional factors. With these factors, we're looking in detail at our school. We're asking questions such as, do we have the time to develop this course? Do we have the resources to develop this course? And do we have the credibility to deliver the course? The third set of factors are instructor factors. We need to look at our teaching staff and decide if we have staff who are qualified either to develop this course or to deliver it. If we don't have qualified staff on board, we need to look and see if we can find someone to bring into the project. The fourth set of factors are learner factors. With these factors, we're looking at our students. We need to ask questions such as, do the students really want to take this course, so are they going to be motivated? Do we have enough students? Are there things going on in our students' lives that might affect their abilities to perform effectively in our class? Finally, we need to look at change factors. By developing and implementing a new course, we're bringing change both into our organization and also into our students' lives. So we need to ask questions that relate to whether everyone's ready for this change. The next piece of our curriculum deals with very, very practical issues about course delivery. These are the course logistics. If you look at the bottom of page 7 on your handout, you'll see very detailed questions that you have to ask and answer. These are questions such as, how long is the course going to be? How many classes are you going to have? How long will each class be? And so on. Now we've come to the piece of the curriculum that takes quite a lot of time and effort to complete. This is developing our syllabus. Remember, our syllabus is all about which language systems, language skills, and content we're going to put into our course. There's a series of very clear steps that we want to follow as we're making these decisions, so let's take a look at them. The first step is to take a look at our course objectives and our goals and divide them into more detailed course objectives and goals. So we want to break them up and add a lot more detail into these objectives. Our second step is to take our detailed objectives and divide them into what I call teachable chunks. These are groups of language or groups of language targets that go together very cohesively and that we can use as the basis of a single lesson. Our third step in this syllabus development process is to take our teachable chunks and put them in a sequence or an order that makes sense from a learning perspective. The fourth step in our process is to decide how much time we're going to spend on each of these teachable chunks. Our fifth step is to decide which activities we're going to use with each of these teachable chunks. This is a really creative process, so it's a very fun part of the syllabus development process. The sixth step, we're almost at the end here, is to decide what resources or materials we need for each of these activities and each of these teachable chunks. Our final step is to document all of this information into a chart so that anyone can look at it and get an idea of what we want to teach in this course. This chart is usually called a scope and sequence chart. Scope meaning how much content we're going to teach, and sequence obviously meaning what order we're going to teach it in. The next piece of our curriculum involves selecting our materials. Our obvious starting point in materials selection is to look at any textbooks that might be available. Textbooks are a good starting point, especially now because most textbooks also include workbooks, audio material, video material, and internet support. So that's where we want to start, but we don't want to end there. There are some disadvantages to textbooks, and we need to compensate for those disadvantages somehow. Textbooks unfortunately become out of date quite quickly, so while they provide a good framework for us, we also want to look for sources of other materials that we can put in. When we're looking for alternatives to our textbook or additional materials with which to supplement our textbook, we need to go directly to authentic materials. These are materials that are real. They come from either the workplace that our students come from or from the profession that our students come from. If you take a look at the diagram on page 9 of your handout, you'll see different kinds of authentic materials to search for as you work on your materials selection. The next piece that we need to decide upon in our curriculum is the assessment piece. We need to decide both our entry and our exit assessments for our students. Our entry assessments tell us what level of proficiency our students have coming into the course. Our exit assessments obviously tell us their language proficiency as they finish our course. We need an entry assessment so that we can be assured that all of our students have at least a base level of language proficiency. That way we know that our activities and our materials will be effective with our students. Our entry assessment also serves as a before picture of our students' abilities. We need this before picture so that we can see what kind of language proficiency improvements we get throughout our course. Why do we need an exit assessment? This may be pretty obvious, but I will say it anyway. We need to know what language proficiency our students are leaving with so we can measure the change. We already know what they started with our entry assessment. Our exit assessment tells us what kind of change we've seen. We need to be able to demonstrate that change for a lot of different reasons. First of all, the students themselves need to be confident that their language proficiency has improved. Their employers may also need to know that there's been some kind of change. And if we can demonstrate a change in language proficiency, we can also justify having run the course in the first place. We need to make sure that our entry and our exit assessments are valid, reliable, and practical. With validity, we're making sure that our intent is what we actually end up doing. So, if my intent is to test reading, is that what I'm really doing? If my intent is to test speaking, is that what I'm really doing? So that's validity. The second one is reliability. Reliability means that I can take the same test from one student and give it to 3 different teachers to mark, and they'll come up with pretty much the same result for that student. The third piece is practicality. Practicality is simply, is this test easy to administer, easy to mark, and is it cost effective? A challenge we may encounter with our entry and our exit assessments is that we may find an assessment that is valid and reliable, but it's not practical. And if it's not practical, it's not going to happen. So our job is to find assessments that let us balance all 3 of these pieces: validity, reliability, and practicality. On page 10 of your handout, I've given you a sample of possible assessments to look at that really do manage to find this balance among validity, reliability, and practicality. So take a look at that list. We're not done with assessments yet. We also need to look at our ongoing assessments. This is also known as formative assessment. This is how we're going to judge student progress throughout the course on an ongoing basis. The diagram on page 10 of our handout gives us some suggestions for possible ongoing assessments. We don't just want to use one of these, we want to mix it up and get some variety going on. So we might have a few tests, a few quizzes, and some presentations to get that variety in there. We're now at the very last piece of our curriculum, and it is not the least important, trust me. This is course evaluation. Once we've run the course for the very first time, we need some type of system with which to figure out if the course has actually worked. This is our course evaluation. Our course evaluation is very similar to our needs analysis. Like our needs analysis, we need to have multiple perspectives on how this course worked. So we're going to talk to our students, our teachers, our administrators, our employers if they're involved, and our funders if there's an outside source of funding. We need all of these perspectives in order to really understand how this course worked. Like our needs analysis, we have a variety of tools that we can develop and then use to conduct our course evaluation. These are listed on page 11 of your handout, and you'll notice they really are almost exactly the same as our needs analysis tools. Once you've collected all of the information with these course evaluation tools, you want to put the information together and then use it in 3 ways. The first thing you want to do is look at the feedback that's very specific to the course content and the course assessments. Use this feedback to make improvements to the course so that the next time you run it, it's actually a better course. The second thing you want to do with this information is put it together into a final report. Circulate this report to all of the stakeholders who were involved in developing and delivering the course. They can now get a really good idea of what happened in this course and how well it worked. The final thing you want to do with this information from your course evaluation is use it to justify and to plan and to promote future courses. We've now looked at all of the pieces that go into a curriculum for a specialized course. As you can see, developing this type of course is not an easy undertaking. However, if you follow this process that we've given you in its entirety, you'll be able to create a really good, rich learning experience for your students.